Hi, this is Eric Skeens with 3 Tree Tech. We simplify the complexities of technologies for businesses and enterprises across the world. And today we're here with Dion Baccus. He's a serial entrepreneur. And Dion, why don't you give a little brief synopsis of who you are and some of the background behind you?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in IT since my early 20s. So at this point, it's 18 plus years, kind of getting up there. And in that drive, I've just continued to educate myself, and I earned a couple degrees. I have a Bachelor in Management Information Systems, and then went and got an MBA, and then got another graduate degree, another master's in Management Information Systems, and that one's with a concentration in cybersecurity. So I'm really passionate about the IT space. I've been in it for a long time and really interested in security. Also, all that's been supported by a great family. I've got 2 little girls, 1 4, 1 7, the love of my life. And then I also have my wife, who is the other love of my life. So I pretty much generate most of my time either I'm working, or as I say to people, my real drive is to keep my women happy. So if the 3 ladies in my family are happy, I'm happy.
That's awesome. Well, today we're going to be talking about Agile in security and looking at a methodology and applying it to a space that is ever moving and ever changing. Can you give me an understanding of, just briefly, Agile in security? What does that mean?
Sure. So, really, the realization is in today's day and age, we have a lot of technology that is becoming part of our day-to-day life. If it's from our iPhones to the different devices we're now putting in our house to automated vehicles. And we see nothing close of slowing down the amount of the technology. It's going to become part of our day-to-day. And what Agile Security is all about is how do you address the threats or potential threats that come about adding this technology, because technology is inherently porous. It inherently can be hacked. How do you address this reality that's coming into our life in a way that is more responsive versus reactive? And what I mean by that is when you're responsive, some kind of new technology is coming out, so you're thinking and planning for the worst and hoping for the best, versus being responsive and that being something is or reactive and something bad is happening and then you just react to it. So you always want to be pushing to be more responsive than you are reactive. And in our space, what we refer to that is shifting security to the left. And that is, you think about security implications while you're designing and building out a new solution, and then immediately it's released into the public domain. The professionals are immediately trying to figure out at as fast rate as they can, how do you hack it?
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, so it sounds like leveraging Agile in security gives an organization or individuals the ability to prepare for the worst, as you said, versus reacting to everything that's coming on from an onslaught perspective.
Absolutely, and that's the biggest difference. The biggest thing to take away from there is do you want to be in a situation that and likely that something bad's going to happen, but you're going to just sit and wait to see what that bad thing is, and then you're going to just react to it. Yep. And we've said this in so many different walks of life, right? We go, it feels so knee-jerk, right? That's what it is. It's a knee-jerk reaction. Oh no, something bad's happened. Pull the fire alarm, right? Yep. But we also know if it's healthcare or fixing your car, preventive maintenance is the way to go, and that is being much more responsive to a situation. You can't own a car without maintaining it, so keep it maintained. Do the things before they break. You see something's got wear and tear on it, you see something has a potential of breaking, then be responsive to that. Don't react to the break and now you're on the side of the road having to call for help. Fix it during your service call and just not deal with it.
That kind of leads me to my next question around you've been in cybersecurity for quite some time. You made sure that you were focusing on it when you were in your studies. Mm-hmm. You continue to, what I love about Agile is continuous improvement, but you continue to learn and soak up information. I know that you're currently studying for certain security certifications, right, CISSP, and you've got other ones that are down the pipe as well. And you have other certifications that point you towards in that security realm. Security inherently today, or not inherently, but organizations have layered on. You see this huge push towards adopting a framework, a NIST framework and an ISO framework. Where does Agile come into this picture, first off, but before you address, or maybe you do address it in how you answer it, but where does Agile layer into this, and what led you to that? So you've been in business, you've been in the industry for 18 plus years now, and you weren't always an Agile guy.
Right.
But what was the catalyst throughout business, throughout your learning, that led you to Agile? And then we'll get into Agile and security and why that even matters.
Okay. So let's start off what kind of led me towards Agile. And I would say it's probably about midway in my career. I had the opportunity at a company to help install an enterprise resource planning system. And it was a mid-cap company. We had locations in 3 different states. In those 3 different states, we had warehouses and offices in, I believe, 5 different cities. Our teams, what they did is they put up temporary structures, and those teams were across the entire country, and sometimes even international. We did go into the islands, Bahamas, and we would do stuff in Canada. So, if you're putting up temporary structures, it's a lot of moving parts all over the place. So this was a pretty big deal to figure out. Not only can you put in enterprise resource planning, ERP, but how do you do it when you have a large portion of your staff mobile and everywhere. So now you've got mobile setup and all this kind of thing. So at this point, I was very married to the traditional way of doing project management and executing or implementing these kind of software packages. And that was the 5 phase where we're going to initiate, and then we're going to plan, and then we're going to execute, and you're going to control and monitor, and then you're going to close it out, right? Nice and tight. And in that initiation, we're going to negotiate all the contracts and say how much time is this going to take, and then we're going to do all this planning, and that's it. So what happened is during that period, we ran into the same kind of impediments and headaches that I think are well known. Like, people have kind of accepted them as part of the problem. Like, oh, you're going to go in with your best intent, and we all think it's going to be this, and then everybody expects there to be overruns and scope creep, and then it's really how much are you controlling it, right? That's the controlling monitoring. Like, how much can you control the damage?
So this is how it's always been done, so just accept it. Yeah,
just accept it. So there we go. And so, a year and a half into that project, it's up, it's running, and it's just, headaches, and it's working, and it's going, and it's getting better each piece, but it really left me going, man, there's got to be a better way. And at the time, I thought the better way is, we just got to plan more. If we would have done more planning and put more up front and been more detailed in the work breakdown structure and been more like line item, that would have fixed it. So later in my career, we get that done, and then I go into a world of entrepreneur, and I start doing consulting, and I take on a job for a company. They're a concrete company. They do foundations and driveways and things of that sort. And we'd had something simple. I was like, okay, well, we're going to build this website. No problem. 30, 45 days. This is a pretty well done thing. Well, 4 months into it, the website's finally launched. And it was just a series in there where we did all the initiation and contract work and agreements of what the price is going to be. Price had change requests and stuff in it because we burnt through that with labor and design work and stuff. And then when we were executing, we did all the planning and thought we had it down. We had wireframes, and there was a certain amount we spent on wireframing. But the look and the feel of the site as it came to life, still big batch. Hey, we took all this stuff, there it is. And the owner would be like, well, I don't quite like this, and I don't quite like that, so don't launch yet. And so that was the constant of, well, this is taking longer than we expected. So there, it was an example. I'd gone from a really big project that was enterprise to a much smaller project that really should have been easy to do in that format, and I had the knowledge of be really diligent around the planning, yet I still ended up in the same situation that 90% of companies around the world implementing IT were seeing. And this was so well known that this is the birth of Agile, that people came together and said, IT has a 70% project fail rate. IT is known for blowing through all of their scopes and budgets and all their restraints.
Which is sad.
Which is sad, but and that's where the Agile Manifesto and stuff comes from. So that was kind of my journey of starting to realize that, hey, this isn't jiving that well. Now, I had one more step as during my schooling on the Masters of Information Systems, the one with the concentration of security. Part of that was also project management and IT. And in there, we still stuck with the traditional, often referred to as waterfall, which is that stop gate or one step at a time approach. It's a very linear, that's how I like to think. It's a very linear step one, step two, step three, and there you go. And we got it all right in the beginning approach. And even after graduating, I mentored 2 classes on it. So I did all that, still baked into it, and kept thinking, hey, if I just get more educated in it and I take what I've learned from the past, I'm going to be different than the average. I'm going to be able to start executing my projects.
Do it better. Yeah, right. Everybody else has problems with it, but
I'm going to be an expert.
Yeah,
right. And then luckily, I started looking around the world and saw this drive towards Agile, and people began to ask about Agile in my space. And so I'm a pretty driven person. Once I get towards something, I just start sucking in. So I started studying it, started taking courses in it, reading on it, found a job opportunity. I went from consulting back into the workforce and found a company and a CIO that was really interested in making the Agile transformation. So he said, hey, do it. I warned him out of the gate, hey, I'm doing this, I've been studying it, but I'm not really bought into it. You know, I think the traditional way is the right way to do it. I don't see how this is going to work. This is going to be a disaster. So fast forward a year and a half later, regardless, I was asked to do something. It's okay, Captain, I'm going to go do it. I'm going to put my best foot forward. A year and a half into it, I just converted. Like, I started seeing how it worked. And that really all had to do with mindset. Once I was able to change my mindset, understand the underlying principles and concepts and the values of Agile, which are really universal. They're not wedded to just software. And it takes understanding them at the root level and changing your mindset from this linear way of solving problems to a way of solving problems that is more dynamic, that inherently believes that there are unknowns and there's some unpredictability, and you need to create time and space for you to adjust to those unknowns. And that's really how I got into this Agile world and began to see problem solving through an Agile lens.
So you gave us an understanding of how you got to Agile. The folks in the audience may not necessarily understand Agile in and of itself.
Okay.
I'd love to get a brief descriptor of kind of what Agile is, especially in comparison, and I think you did a great job of where you came from in the waterfall methodology, and kind of why it led you to ask the question, is there something better out there, and eventually finding it from a process perspective within Agile. Give us an understanding of Agile in and of itself.
You know, I think to understand Agile, you really have to begin understanding that it's a mindset. And what you're trying to do is change your mindset about how you solve problems. And that's what they're challenging you to do inside this space or this way of thinking. And that is, you know, often people want to solve problems or think things are very linearly. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. There you go, you made it to your destination. But it is very hard to predict everything that's happening in the future, right? You know, we've had things like the Oracle in the days of the Greek, whatever, but nobody can really fortune tell. And so the reality of the situation is that more often than not, what you really have is an hypothesis. You see a problem, you believe you know what the solution is, but you don't really know the solution until you get into it and you try to actually solve the problem, right? And then when you begin to actually solve the problem, you begin to test your hypothesis, then you find out things, you know, and that's referred to as validated learning.
Yep.
So what Agile really is the scientific method where you are coming up with a hypothesis how to solve a problem. You're running experiments saying, hey, this is how I think it's going to be solved.
Yep.
You're letting that inform your knowledge about where you really are, how accurate is your solution, your hypothesis to the problem, and then you intentionally make points to have positive feedback loops to say, hey, what I know today, does it match what I knew or what I thought I knew yesterday? If so, great, continue on. If not, where do I need an adjustment? And normally it's somewhere in between. Some things you got right, some things you didn't get quite right.
Okay.
And so this approach says, instead of planning everything up front and then being very meticulous about follow the plan, that says, hey, get a good enough plan that we understand the direction we're going, we understand what we're solving, and let's have built-in points where we then can stop and check our progress and make adjustments if needed. Okay. And that's the essence of it.
Now I know you're a rugby boy for sure.
Yes.
And I'd love to, because I believe in, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Agile or Scrum, maybe both come out of, or were birthed or leverage where rugby actually came from.
Right.
And the birth of rugby. And I'd love to hear that story, because I think that's a great way to understand how Agile, and then you've got the Scrum framework, Scrum framework, and you have other frameworks, but how this even came to thought. And
like how rugby got married into it. So Agile really came out of a group of gentlemen, which, they came out with this need of how do we address the reality that IT projects are failing more often than they're succeeding. I've read places that there's at one point in the late 90s and late 2000s, you're talking 70% fail rates.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just outright never getting the solution out the door. Yeah. And then the other 30% being like 99% of those are over budget and late. They miss all their deadlines and they cost far more than they were anticipated to, right? So they came to me and said, well, how do you get past this, right? So that's really the birth of Agile.
I know Jeff Sutherland talked about that quite a bit in his book. And he talks about some of the projects he worked on where, massive government projects that never ever came to fruition. Right. Because of the fact that there was that Agile methodology wasn't used, and it was other things.
It was the traditional waterfall style. And that's a great book. It's called Scrum. And Jeff Sutherland and his partners, the one that then created the Scrum framework based on the Agile Manifesto. Yep. So they said, okay, well, here's the manifesto this is group made. How can we kind of formalize this more into a framework that people can actually adopt? And so I'll tell you this is a good point. So rugby is a great game. It's super fun. It's very dynamic. Things are happening all the time. There's not a lot of stoppage in play. And when there is stoppage, it tends to pick up quickly. And so, it's just in the DNA of the game. So it starts with this. So back in 1823, a gentleman named William Webb Ellis, a well-known and very fine disregard of rules, was at the School of Rugby, and they're out there one day playing a game of soccer, known everywhere else out of America, football, playing a game of football, and he decides, as they're going on the field, to just scoop up the ball, take off running down the field, and then just drop kick the ball into the goal. So chaos ensues immediately after. You can't do that. What are you doing? And the realization of it is at this point in time, nobody had actually formally written the rule that you can't pick up the ball. It was just common, a known rule, don't pick up the ball. But it wasn't formalized. So the point of the story, and that's nice about that is particularly in the realm of security, is that where a rule can be broken, rules will be broken. I'm going to say that again. Where a rule can be broken, a rule will be broken. And that's really the birth of rugby kind of points to that. And that's what you're in the world of cybersecurity. And that's also part of, I think, where Jeff got with the rugby being is in this very agile, very dynamic game. And part of that, what came out of that, the game of rugby, is a group, which is, these group of guys of how they put the ball into play. It's called a scrum. And the scrum only works if you work as a team. And so that's what it's all about. That's how they took the framework, kind of gave it the name Scrum, because it was about, hey, we all got to come together, deal with this unpredictability, that these rules are going to be bent and broken, and we got to do it as a team. And so let's use this Agile Manifesto, and let's use this concept of working together to accomplish a particular goal to deal with unpredictability and with things changing so rapidly.
So with Agile, and I know that you don't hold tightly to specific frameworks from conversations we've had in the past. Right. And Scrum is a great framework. Can you give an understanding, because cybersecurity has been around for a long time, or not a long time, for since technology's been around, cybersecurity's been something that you've always had to protect against, because there's always threat actors. No matter how far we come along in technology, there's always a threat actor.
Right.
And so you've got cybersecurity, you've got Agile over here, and with both of those things in place for quite some time now, over 30 plus years, and Agile being a huge game changer based on kind of how you described Agile, how it's impacted you, how it's impacted business. You have cybersecurity that's ever changing, ever evolving. Why hasn't anybody taken Agile and layered it into security in a formalized model? I'd love to understand, because you've taken two different models and looked at cybersecurity and Agile and decided that they need to come together somehow.
Right, right.
And I'd love to understand that piece and how you incorporate Agile and what that looks like from just a framework perspective, how that's layered into there.
Sure, sure. So one, I think some of the mistakes that people can make is thinking of the frameworks such as Scrum and Scaled Agile frameworks safe as that's Agile, and if you don't do that, then you're not doing Agile. And part of the problem with that way of thinking is both of those are very much geared towards software development.
Okay.
And if you study it enough, you really realize that the principles and the concepts that inside Agile, with a little bit of a tweaking of taking a word software out, maybe adding the word product, is something that can be applied across the enterprise. So I think that right there is one of the obstacles that keeps it from getting into security, or even in other places inside the enterprise, is this thought of, oh, well, that's for software.
Yeah.
Right? So that becomes an impediment. It's kind of more of a mental block. I think bigger than that is mindset. So, the 80-20 rule around this is, 80% of your value becomes from 20% of your work. Is people want to drive towards the process. They want to drive to the new shiny tool. Hey, we got this new app, and it's an Agile app, and now we're going to be Agile. And the problem is if you don't change the way you solve problems and don't think about solving problems in a dynamic way versus a linear or a static way, then you won't ever get there. And so that's why I think the blocker is. So people are kind of stuck around, well, Agile's for software, and this is how you do stuff, step 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so if people can take their mindset, begin to retool it, right? Let go of that fear of change. People have a fear of change, which I always find funny, because the only thing that will never change is change itself. Yeah. So you should just kind of accept change.
The only constant is change.
Only constant's change. So let go of the fear of change. Constantly looking at how to do things better. Walk away from the status quo, look for progress, look for a better way, right? If you can start thinking and seeing the world that way, and then say, okay, look, the ways we've done things have served us well for a stated period of time, but we should evolve that, because that's the natural state of things in the universe. They evolve to the next level. And so that's what we have to do here as well to get it adopted in places besides just developing software, is to get people to change their mindset, see things in a way of how do you solve problems in a dynamic way? How do you set out some kind of hypothesis for your solution, if it's a marketing piece or whatever? In the case here, we want to focus on cybersecurity. How do we look at our security posture and say, well, this is our objective? And then how do we follow that with a continuous improvement piece, where we say, well, we think today here's what we need to do, but we're inherently and on purpose going to build in these points that we say every so often. Maybe it's bi-weekly, maybe it's monthly, that we're going to stop, pause, reflect on what we've done, validate that the direction we're going and what we think is a priority is the right priority. What's changed in the world that says, hey, you know what we thought was a priority a month ago is no longer. I like to think back to the rugby story on this and going, the game at the beginning of the football game was a much different situation for everybody on that field than it was at the end of the game, because the rules changed. Yeah. And that's what happens in cybersecurity as well. As actors are coming out there, new products are released, and they find new hacks, new ways, new cybercrime to do. What you thought a month ago was a priority to protect yourself isn't the same, because those rules got broken.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, we've got security is a very important piece within organizations, because you have threat actors, whether they're nation states, whether they're organized bodies, groups of bodies, or individuals. You've got hacker universities being brought up in different countries, which is just boggles my mind.
Yeah.
That they've got these communities, these cities that are just wrapped around hacking, and for us as individuals or organizations to think that we can layer on a static plan in place in order to combat that. They have our playbook.
Right.
Everything we're doing within cybersecurity, they have our playbook.
Right.
So how do you get around that? And that's why I love this concept and this methodology of being able to layer in Agile into security, because you're not using a static framework. You're able to shift and move in a given time frame. However you build those iterations, those sprints, daily changes, whatever is needed in order to make that happen.
Absolutely. I know the things you're hitting on there are just, they're fun thought exercises for me, just to kind of solve the problem. I had a rugby coach, Coach Kip, and he used to always say, when we were coaching and practicing for our next game, it doesn't matter if the other team knows exactly what you're going to do. If you do it well enough, they won't be able to stop you.
Yep.
And if you kind of take that mentality and what we're talking about here, it's the same thing. We have NIST. We have a standard about what you need to do to secure yourself. You have the CIS standards. You have ISO standards. They can know what you're going to do, but if you do it well, you're not going to be able to stop them. So as we're seeing things such as in Eastern Europe, where criminal organizations are literally creating universities because there's more money for the population to come work for them to do hacking and to do cybercrime than there is for them to go to the actual university, take on the debt, and then enter into the workforce. So you're seeing, crime being professionalized at a rate that you've never seen in our history of humans. Plus, you have the new battleground, right? The battleground for the 21st century is going to be in the cyber world. We have states that are learning how, including the United States, on how to blow up plants.
Yeah.
Electrical plants, because they're all driven by information systems, and you can put code in there to do things that make the different generators and stuff explode.
Tweak it
right?
just a little bit.
So knowing that's that constant shifting reality, what you really get into here is, hey, your standards are good. They're not your problem. The problem is where you kind of take this long view of all we have to do is this over the next year. I've been in that senior manager role, and I have worked with my teams and with my consultants that were, outside the organization, and with partners, business partners, and we've sat down and time and time again what I heard was, well, let's sit down and make a one-year roadmap. Now we got this, if we have this one-year roadmap, we know what we're doing the next year, and we'll just go do that, and everything's going to be fine. Our security posture will be solid because we'll follow the standards. Well, the problem that is the standards are going to take time to do. Unless you've got a tremendous amount of money and a lot of people that you're going to crank this out in a month, that's a journey. It's going to take a journey to get to a baseline, and then it's going to take a whole nother journey to get to the next level, and it takes years to get to the highest level, right? And in that meantime, you're seeing threats happen and come out daily. Daily. So here you are, you have a plan for the next year of how to address the threats that you know of today, with new threats coming out every day, and you have no plan to adjust to go, well, we thought that this was that we needed to work on, that we needed to go harden the firewalls because that's the most important thing, and you're ignoring that 1 week after you made that plan, you may have come and found out that there is a vulnerability in one of the software packages that you're using that leaves you totally exposed. And the realization of it is attacks tend to come through one channel more than anything else, social engineering. So now if your malicious actors are able to get a foothold through a social engineering, you're busy out dealing with a problem it's a problem, but you're not dealing with the more risky problem because it's now on your one-year roadmap. We'll pick that up next year.
You won't be here next year.
You won't be here. Or you're dealing with some kind of breach and whatever fallout that is, which is extremely costly. And that's the point of, I think, where Agile thinking comes into play. And I'm not the only one. It's small, but there is a community out there. And there's some that will call it DevSecOps. Okay. I like the thought of calling it SecDevOps in the sense of push security to the front. And my really preferred is just calling it back to the DevOps and going, security is just part of it.
Yeah.
Security is sitting on the teams that are developing your solutions in real time. It's not another entity. It's not another step in the process. It is part of the process. And then what you want to do is, if you need some kind of clarity of, hey, I need something consistent to say we're doing this over a period of time. 2 weeks and making a decision every 2 weeks doesn't give me enough for view of the horizon. Then I like how SAFe looks at it, right? And this is back to what you said before. I don't necessarily prescribe to one framework. Some companies may pick at them, that's fine, but you can read all of them and learn something to pick up what they've said and do it in increments. Yeah. Every quarter, what are your objectives? What are you trying to do this quarter? And now within that side of that quarter, you do 2-week iterations to actually do your solutions. So let's say, for example, you sit down, your goal for this quarter or increment is to get the dial tone of your security posture, right? And you adopt the, say, CIS framework, or CIS standards. That is it, you're gonna use it as a benchmark for that. And everybody's good with the goal and you get working. Well, 2 weeks into the increment, you find out, or let's say 1 week into it, you're halfway through a sprint, you find out there's this new vulnerability. Well, now you have the ability to add that body of work to your backlog and say, hey, this is something we've learned new out of Intel. It's very dangerous. We've done some initial discovery while the cross-functional team was working to put out solutions. We have found out that we are vulnerable to this situation. We have this in play. We're running this software or whatever it is. And so you put in the backlog. So now your next iteration, you're able to plan and go, hey, our objective is to set the dial tone. This is a dial tone issue, so it fits into our objective for the increment, and we're going to bake that into the next iteration to go ahead and get done now, and we're going to deprioritize this other thing that's important but not as important as this. Yeah. And to me, that approach is agile at its core, and that keeps you far safer. And that's what it comes down to, right? You're trying to keep you safe. You're trying to avoid these incidents, and that puts you in a much better position to, again, as I started off, or I said earlier, to be responsive versus being reactive.
Yep. No, that's a great point. It allows to make sure that you are prepared, right. And that's where Agile comes into play. It allows you to be prepared, and you need to be that in the security world, because you've got these folks, these threat actors that are coming after you.
Right.
At full force. So we've talked a lot about Agile and security and the importance of it, why it even came about. Mm. I want to know one more thing.
Okay.
And I like to ask this question just because it's just interesting.
Uh-oh.
What is one thing that people don't know about you?
Okay. I'm gonna exclude my family because they all know this about me.
Yeah.
I love the dance, and I love electronic dance music. So I normally will start my morning off with headphones on, listening to dance music, and going dancing to the house, still in my pajamas, drinking a cup of coffee. So that's how my day starts.
So when you say dance music, are you talking about Latin dance? Are you talking about hip hop? You said electronic dance.
So it's electronic dance.
Drum and bass, techno.
It's got a lot of different names. Okay. People that are out there that know this stuff, I can probably know Dimitri Vegas and Light Mike and Martin Garrix and Lost Frequency, so they'll all get it. Okay. So there's festivals like Tomorrowland. They have a lot of music I listen to and things like that. I'll tell you a story. It's funny. We were on a ski trip, me and a couple buddies, and I was in the passenger seat on the way to the mountain, and I was running, the music. And so then we go and ski, and when we ski, everybody assumes you got headphones in that you're listening, to Metallica and this hardcore stuff.
Of course.
And not me. The whole time I've got nothing but dance music on, and half of them are like, love songs with drum and bass in the background. And so we come back to the truck, and somebody cranks up the car to warm it up as we're putting all our gear in, and so my phone reconnects, and I'm not even paying attention to it, and all of a sudden my buddy Peter goes, hey, how did we end up in a rave all of a sudden? And that's when I realized that my music was now blaring across the SUV, and it's nothing but, this, DJs and dance music. And, I just find it to be a good time, and I love the dance, and I there's something about, just the energy that comes out of that always makes me smile. And,
yeah.
And so That's it. That's the one thing most people don't know is that I love dance music, and a lot of it's love stories.
Awesome. Love it. So appreciate your time, Dion. I know there's a lot that we're going to be doing together, and we look forward to that, and we look forward to seeing how Agile gets integrated into the security space pretty heavily, and we hope that we can help you get to that with a lot of organizations, because I truly believe in this being pushed within organizations in order to move faster than the bad guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys. Truly appreciate it.